Modern relationships are not built to last anymore. And deep down, you know that truth. Of course, it starts off exciting. There's so much energy. It feels wonderful. And then that flame of desire and excitement just burns away. And these relationships crash hard. And as for you, you give your time, your money, your loyalty, your energy, your life, and yet it somehow still just crashes and burns. In this video, I'll show you why most relationships don't last any longer and what's really causing them to collapse, even when you think and believe you're doing everything right as a man. Also, if you're currently stuck, drained, and on the edge of walking away or very confused of what to do next, let me help you. Book a free discovery call with me. The link's in the description down below. We know that society has fallen in a way. We know that people are more entitled, easily influenced, and selfish than ever before. We know that people's values are in the toilet. We know that we're just doing the best we can in a world that's just so chaotic. Yes, social media plays a part. Yes, feminism and online movements and all this woke nonsense, etc., plays a part. Yes, toxic influences and people plays a part. But when you really break it down, most people, men included, don't have a bloody clue what a relationship is, what it entails, and what longevity even looks like. When people's job satisfaction and longevity in their careers spanning to maximum maybe 6 months to 1 to 2 years, there's always change. With the economy literally going up and down, you don't know where you're going to be next, how much money you need, or how much things are going to cost next as well. And with people falling out more than ever before, with their friendship groups, their families, and so on, it all seems to fall apart, and it all plays a factor. The one thing that needs to last, the one thing that needs to go the distance, should be a relationship, should be your family unit. But it still doesn't. Because like I said, I don't think anyone knows what a relationship is, what it takes to make it work, and what it really takes to go the distance. You can check all the boxes. Get married in a church. You can be of the same faith. You could get along like best friends. But to make it work, to go through the hard times, to understand what it entails to death do you part, is really the problem here. Because studies show that relationship satisfaction steeply declines over time. And the longer you're together, the more issues you're going to have. And if you've got issues at the beginning, they say, good luck further down the line. But let's break it down in a very logical and very rational perspective. A man enters a relationship because of the following reasons. He's decided that he wants something more of his life. He's desperately single and alone. He might be rebounding from a breakup, or he's been gaslighted, manipulated, and bullied to do so because of culture, family, his age, etc. So regardless of the circumstances, that spark, that initial attraction where he finds that relationship depends on the reasoning of why he got there in the first place. And depending on the partner as well, that makes a massive difference. So I know what it's like being in a relationship where it's toxic, where it's unfulfilling, where satisfaction nosedives very early on. But I also know what it's like being in a relationship where you find your feet, and yes, you might have differences, and it's very healthy to begin with, but it gets better over time, and you get better over time. Those are the relationships that are meant to last. Those are the relationships where you transform as people for the better, regardless of the arguments, regardless of the disagreements, regardless of the problems. And here's the other thing. Not every relationship is easy. Not every relationship doesn't have disagreements. Women will argue with you. Be emotional. Women will let you down. You will let women down. There will be problems. This is life. It is not plain sailing. It is not a friendship. It is not what you see on social media, in sitcoms and in movies. It is not happy-go-lucky all the time. There are work issues, health issues, your issues, trauma unresolved. So we need to be rooted in reality here. Because here's the thing. If you're looking for an excuse to break up right now or to divorce, you're in the wrong relationship. But let's focus more so on a generalized view through studies and logic again as to why this breaks down. Even if on paper it looks so good or too good to be true. Now, most relationships begin with problems, but no one admits that. According to recent research, many couples who end up eventually divorcing, breaking up, were already dissatisfied in the first 2 to 3 dates, okay? There were signs, emotional friction, mismatched values, confusion, but they ignored it. And why did they do so? I'll touch on that in a moment. So, 2 to 3 dates is an incredibly early stage of a relationship, right? The second date is massive. If you're arguing and disagreeing that early on, you're not aligned. And people might say, oh, but it was good for me in the beginning and then it got worse over time. Now, I want you to really think back to your doubts, to your questions. Unless you were literally swept off your feet by their beauty, their charm, whatever, that's a different story. But why? Why were these ignored? Why were they swept under the rug? Or maybe you actually confronted them. When I was in that toxic relationship I had in the past, on the second date, I had a problem. Mismatched values, confusion, very, very confused. In fact, even on the first date, I noticed something that gave me a warning sign that that person was toxic or narcissistic even. But I ignored it. And why did we do that? Why does anyone do that? Because they were tired of being alone. If a man has been desperately single, lonely, and lacks any interaction with a woman, full stop, any date he has or any potential interaction, he's going to hold on for dear life, because he doesn't know when or where he's going to get it next. That is not the right foundation to go into a relationship, because that's what's going to happen. When I met my now fiance, it was a different story. No emotional friction. In fact, an emotional connection so strong, it's the foundation of the relationship. No mismatched values. In fact, that's also what we bonded over. And no confusion. We got along. No games, no BS. That's why we are where we are right now. And like I said, we still have problems. We all have problems. That is life. Get used to it. But they begin with problems. All relationships that eventually end and break up like this, they begin. But no one wants to admit it. So, please, take your rose-tinted glasses off and don't overlook the beginning. If the early stages are filled with that tension, you're not figuring it out, you're already in the decline. These relationships do decline over time, and they have a steep decline. And if they're nosediving right from the beginning, forget it. And by the way, all relationships do that. They all have a steep decline. After the honeymoon phase, after the excitement, once you're living together, once you're sharing bathrooms, sharing beds, dealing with emotional problems, dealing with health issues, work, etc., financial, that's the thing. It's going to decline and flatline. But if you go through that period, the next 10, 20 years or so on, get better. But only with the right person. Relationship satisfaction is the crunch of this all. And by relationship satisfaction, I would define that as your needs, wants, and desires, and your contentment in a relationship. The greatest ever description I've had or heard of when it comes to relationships is a relationship should be your home. It should be your haven. It should be your peace. It should be your tranquility. If you are not able to sit on the sofa, eat dinner, and be comfortable with one another, then that is not a heaven. That is a hell. And I know this because I've tasted the alternative. I used to see the toxic ex I was with once a week. Twice. We didn't live together, thank God. I dreaded meeting up with them. I dreaded being with them. And I hated it throughout and was on edge. Never felt like that with my partner. Now, who it's chalk and cheese. Studies show that couples' happiness drops steeply after that initial honeymoon phase, and it keeps falling. Now, the honeymoon phase is where everything is wonderful. And when you're with a toxic person, the honeymoon phase escalates to another level. It's so over the top. It's so excitable. It's very childish and immature. And men especially suffer in silence, numbing themselves while pretending everything's fine, lying to themselves, their partner, and everybody else. How do I know this? Because I did it myself. The last year I was together with that person, I went out with friends and we went out for dinner. And they grilled me about the next stage of my relationship at the time. They asked me, is she the one? Are you happy? Are you content? And no word of a lie, I shrugged my shoulders over like that. I looked down, was depressed. I couldn't make eye contact. I was like, yeah, I'm sure I am. I numbed myself. I don't speak that way now. I'm proud of the man I am. I'm proud of the relationship I have because it doesn't decline. It doesn't obviously have the same excitement that it does at the beginning because that's the euphoria and the excitement of getting to know people. That happens in all relationships. But the contentment, the happiness, the deepening of the bond and commitment and love is on another level and has made me another man. That's the difference. So it's so important to track emotional momentum. Are things deepening or dying? If they're not deepening, they're dying. It's simple as that. I didn't even have to live with a toxic ex-partner to know it was dying. It was dying, it stunk, it needed to be buried. It was a dead horse that didn't want to be flogged. If you've been coasting for a few months or more, you're likely stuck in that downward curve. There's nothing to look forward to. There's nothing bringing you closer together. You're not learning from each other. And neither one of you is working on themselves. That's a really key point. You cannot be the parent of the relationship, which is exactly what I did. I tried to level up. I tried to improve. I tried to develop. But I couldn't do so with a toxic ex who was arrogant and narcissistic and thought they were perfect as they were. Whereas with my partner, despite many setbacks in her life and things going on with her, she surprises me and surprises herself with the opportunity of investing in her development, wants to train in the gym, wants to invest in her mental health, wants to expand her wisdom and knowledge. That is deepening. That is respect. That is evolving. That's someone I want to be with forever. And likewise with her, with me. But when you don't do anything, and you put your feet up and you are arrogant, you think you're the best, it's dead. And no amount of personal growth on your side can save someone who wants to stay exactly where they are, wallowing and plodding along. And lastly, life responsibilities make a bad relationship worse. A common problem that men have is when they are so trauma bonded or in such a negative spiral with a toxic person, they stupidly think, well, if I show my commitment by buying an engagement ring, having children, getting a house, then it's going to make things better, right? Well, actually, kids, mortgages, shared bills, stress, all the pressure piles on top of an already fragile bond. And it turns into a prison that is man-made. Research confirms that major life transitions, relationship satisfaction at that point hits an all-time low, especially if the couple wasn't solid to begin with. So I broke up with that toxic ex years ago, and I'll give it as a comparison. We never lived together, but when I presented the opportunity to do so, they suggested buying something, and I did not want to do that. I wanted to experiment living together, and I was an idiot back then as well, very naive. But that was the straw that broke the camel's back. We couldn't even agree how to live together. Meanwhile, with my partner, we've been living together for a few years, and it's got easier. It's got better. It works. We found our rhythm. That's the thing. There will be tension, especially if you're quite highly strung, especially if you're very set in your own ways, quite stubborn. But eventually you find your rhythm. I can't sleep in a bed without her now. Neither can she. We eat together every night. We have our rituals and routines, and we share the bills. We're now planning for a home. It works. That's the difference. Don't try and fix emotional problems with shared responsibilities. Fix the connection or rebuild yourself outside the chaos. Trust me, if you can't live together, forget a relationship. And living together isn't just, spending all your time together in the same home. Living together means cleaning, cooking, taking the bins out, paying the bills, sorting out repairs, still having date nights, still making an effort, being respectful to each other if one person's working late or early, sharing all responsibilities. And by the end of even 6 months, if you haven't killed each other, as in like you've just argued constantly, whatever, that's a success. Studies have shown men and or women who are on the verge of the breakup would dread putting their keys into the door when coming home to that partner, that relationship. If you don't have that and you're excited to come home, different story. So do not make a man-made prison thinking that a fragile, shaky bond is going to get better. Relationships today fail because of one big mistake. They fail because of so many ignored red flags and a slow, silent loss of connection, bond, and satisfaction. Whilst time will always expose everything in the sense of satisfaction dropping, our true colours, our true nature, what we're like when we're triggered and so on, the worst arguments, our bodily functions being exposed, our biggest insecurities, etc. It's how you feel about that person, that relationship after all of that, that realism staring you in the face, is either going to be make or break. A relationship is not perfect. Marriage isn't. It isn't at all. But the ones who break up, like I said, ignore those red flags and things get worse over time. No deepening, no emotional connection. They just do not work. That's the truth. And if you're stuck, drained, confused, want to walk away, resonate with my past, want what I've got now and what healthier people have now as well, then let me help you. Just book a free discovery call with me. The link's in the description down below. Remember, learn about relationships. Okay? The truth. And the truth will always set you free.